In a world that constantly asks, "Who are you really?" What if your peace begins the moment you stop answering? We've all felt it, the need to explain ourselves, to justify why we feel what we feel, why we left, why we stayed, why we chose peace instead of proving a point. But what if I told you that the more you explain yourself, the more you invite pain? In this video, we'll explore 12 deeply powerful Buddhist teachings that reveal a spiritual truth. You don't owe anyone your story, and your healing doesn't need permission. These insights will guide you from inner chaos to clarity, from the chains of people-pleasing to the unshakable power of inner calm. We'll explore why people panic when you go silent, why your detachment scares others, and why your energy becomes your greatest protection once you stop needing to be understood. Stick with me until the end, because these truths don't just explain healing. They transform your relationship with power, peace, and presence. Comment below, "I choose calm." Let your voice echo a truth someone else needs to hear. 1. The moment you realize you're doing it again. It starts with a small itch in the soul, a tightness in your chest after someone misunderstands you. You feel it rising, the urge to explain, to defend, to clarify. "That's not what I meant. You don't understand." Let me just say this. But what are you really trying to protect? Your truth or your image? We've all done it. And the moment you realize you're doing it again, something inside you sighs. Why do I keep explaining what my silence already answered? This is not clarity, it's a habit, a reflex born not from confidence, but fear. The fear of being judged, of not being enough, of losing love. And like a ghost knocking on a door it no longer lives behind, we seek validation from people who never truly listened, seeking entry into a past that has already burned down. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that the repetition of pain is the soul's cry for awareness. When you catch yourself justifying your existence, repeating the same emotional script, you are being offered a mirror, not punishment, practice. You're being shown where your identity still clings, where your peace is still negotiable. Place your hand over your heart right now. Whisper to yourself, "I don't need to relive this." That act alone is power. That breath is presence. That awareness is freedom. In Buddhist thought, attachment to how we're perceived is a root of suffering. The more we try to explain ourselves, the more we hand others the script to our story. They don't need that power, and neither do you. Silence, when chosen from strength, not suppression, is a sacred act of healing. It's how the awakened mind says, "I am at peace with being misunderstood." Now think, what are you still trying to prove? To whom? Why now? When was the last time explaining yourself actually made you feel whole? Or did it leave you drained, still unseen? The modern world glorifies constant expression, but ancient wisdom reminds us, stillness reveals more than noise. We don't need to narrate our worth. We need to embody it. You're not responsible for curating other people's comfort with your truth. You're only responsible for knowing it and living it gently but fiercely. In relationships, at work, in moments of conflict, it's tempting to over-clarify just to be safe. But safety isn't built through performance. It's built through self-respect. When you stop explaining, you stop negotiating with your peace. And the moment you stop negotiating with your peace, no one can use misunderstanding as a weapon. So here's your quiet practice. The next time the urge to explain rises, pause, breathe. Then choose stillness over scrambling. Let your presence do the talking. Let your energy set the tone. Let your silence protect your soul. Because you don't owe them your backstory. You owe yourself your freedom. And remember this, the moment you stop needing to be understood, you become untouchable. For silence is not surrender, it is the shield of the awakened. 2. Why over-explaining becomes emotional survival. There comes a moment, quiet, sudden, when you hear yourself over-explaining again, justifying your choices, detailing your intentions, performing an emotional dance, hoping someone finally understands. You pause mid-sentence and wonder, who am I really talking to? Them, or the part of me still aching to be heard? Is your voice trying to soothe others, or your own unhealed past? Over-explaining isn't about clarity. It's a survival instinct, wired into those who learned early that love had to be earned, that being misunderstood was dangerous, that safety meant over-delivering, preempting disappointment, anticipating judgment. So we become skilled performers, careful with our words, rehearsed in our responses. We build sentences like shields, trying to protect the vulnerable child inside who never got to feel safe in silence. Buddhist teachings invite us to look beneath our actions, not just at them. They tell us, all suffering is a teacher in disguise. Over-explaining is not weakness, it's wisdom misplaced. A habit born from a time we needed it to survive. But what kept us safe once now keeps us exhausted. Because no matter how many times you explain yourself, the emptiness doesn't leave. Why? Because explaining becomes the echo of our abandoned inner child. Like shouting into an echo chamber, hoping the sound of your voice will finally hug you back. Pause. Place your hand on your chest. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold. And exhale without words. Feel that? That's what healing sounds like. In Buddhist mindfulness, this is the practice of non-reactivity, reclaiming your breath before the need to react takes over. When you observe your urge to explain, you shift from habit to awareness, and awareness creates space. Space to choose a different path. One where your worth isn't on trial. One where your truth doesn't require translation. Ask yourself, what part of my pain still needs permission to be real? What emotion have you been editing to keep others comfortable? The one you keep sweeping under explanations, hoping no one sees it? That part doesn't need more words. It needs more love. From you. You are not here to convince the world that you are enough. You are here to remember that you always were. That your silence can be sacred. That your peace is not a negotiation. This week, try this. When you catch yourself over-explaining, stop. Close your eyes. Breathe. Let the discomfort pass like a wave. And in that pause, whisper, I choose peace over proving. Because the truth is, when you stop explaining yourself, you start discovering yourself. And in that discovery, no one can hurt you anymore. Not because pain disappears, but because it no longer defines you. And remember, you don't have to be understood to be whole. You just have to be willing to stop abandoning yourself every time silence gets heavy. Let your calm be louder than your explanation. Let your stillness be your strength. 3. What changes inside? When you finally go quiet. You've spent years trying to be heard, explaining, proving, pleasing, hoping that if you just say it right, they'll finally see you. But then something happens. One day you go quiet, not because you've given up, but because you've finally woken up. And it's not the world that's changed, it's you. The storm you thought was outside was actually within. And now, for the first time, it's silent. What happens when the noise stops, not around you, but within? At first, it's unfamiliar, like stepping into a room you've avoided for years. No voices to argue with, no need to fix anything, just stillness. And that's when you hear it. the part of you that was buried beneath all that explaining, a quiet strength, a knowing. Silence doesn't mean absence, it means alignment. It means the parts of you that were at war have called a truce. In Buddhist thought, silence is not passive, it's presence. It's the moment when the mind stops demanding and starts observing. When you're no longer reacting to everything around you, you begin to respond to what's true within you. Like a candle that finally sees its own glow once the winds have calmed. You realize you were always the light. You were just too busy defending your fire to feel its warmth. Try this practice now. Sit in silence, 2 minutes, eyes closed, no fixing, no answering, just being. The mind will resist at first because it's been trained to measure value by noise. But stay, and something remarkable will begin to rise. Not a thought, not a phrase, a truth. One that has no need for explanation because it simply is. What truth emerges in your stillness that words can't carry? Is it forgiveness? Is it power? Is it freedom? You'll find that the less you explain, the more rooted you become. Your energy is no longer leaking into every misunderstanding, every false perception. You begin to walk differently, less like someone trying to be chosen, more like someone who has already chosen themselves. And the people around you, they start to notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. They feel your boundaries, not as walls, but as presence. They hear your silence, not as withdrawal, but as wisdom. You're no longer trying to be everything for everyone. You're simply being you. In a world addicted to commentary, your quiet becomes revolutionary, a sanctuary, a statement, a standard. And remember this, you don't become powerful by being louder. You become powerful by no longer needing noise to confirm your worth. So stop explaining, start aligning. Let the world adjust to your silence. Let your presence speak what words never could. 4. Why people panic when you stop performing. They liked you better when you were explaining yourself, when you smiled to keep the peace, when you said yes to avoid the tension, when you over-delivered, over-apologized, and made sure no one ever felt too uncomfortable around your truth. But the moment you stop performing, when you stop justifying your peace, watch what happens. People don't always applaud your growth. They panic. Not because you did something wrong, but because your silence threatens the illusion they depended on. Why do they get anxious when you finally rest inside your truth? Because your quiet forces them to hear themselves. Because when you no longer carry the emotional labor, they're left with their own noise, like pulling the power from a puppet show and watching the audience scramble, not knowing if the silence means ending, freedom, or confrontation. That's how your detachment feels to them. Not passive, powerful, unpredictable, free. In Buddhism, this is the essence of non-attachment. You release not just people, but the need to be what they expect. You no longer act out of obligation to maintain their version of you. And that's terrifying for those who depended on your self-abandonment. They were comforted by your performance, but freedom doesn't perform, it simply is. Inhale peace, exhale the need to explain. Sit in the discomfort, not of guilt, but of power reclaiming its seat. This is your practice now. To notice when the urge to soften your truth comes from old conditioning. To ask, whose comfort am I prioritizing over my peace? Who benefits when I silence myself to maintain their illusion? You'll realize something crucial. You weren't too much. You were just surrounded by people who needed you smaller to feel secure. And your stillness? It disturbs them, because it reveals how loud their expectations were. When you stop explaining, they have to confront who they are without your validation. And not everyone is ready for that. But here's the beauty. You are. You're ready to stop living in the mirror of others and start standing in the light of your own awareness. You're ready to let your presence say what your explanations never could. I exist beyond your approval. That's not arrogance, that's inner alignment. And you will be tested. Your quiet will be misunderstood. Your peace will be mistaken for distance. But keep choosing it, because the ones who truly see you won't demand a performance. They'll honor your stillness as presence. They'll meet you where you are, not where your past people-pleasing left you. And remember this: you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that exists only to keep them comfortable. You owe yourself a life that feels like truth. When you stop explaining, no one can hurt you, not because they stop trying, but because it no longer lands where it used to. You've unplugged from the show, and in the silence that remains, you finally hear your own peace. 5. Your energy after detachment hits. There's a moment after detachment that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like nothing. You've stopped trying to explain, defend, fix, or prove. You walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. And yet a strange silence follows. Is this numbness or freedom in disguise? You wonder if it's weakness to let go. But then something inside whispers, what if walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom? This is where your energy begins to return. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but like water finding its own riverbank. You're not bleeding into everyone anymore. You're not giving rehearsed justifications to those who never truly listened. And in that stillness, something beautiful begins to rise. Power. The kind of power that doesn't need a microphone. The less you explain, the stronger your energy becomes. You no longer seek validation as fuel. You are the flame. Buddhism teaches detachment not as coldness, but as balance. You stop clinging. You stop attaching your identity to outcomes, people, or reactions. And when that happens, the energy that once scattered into apologies and explanations begins to gather inside you again. Like a wildfire that used to burn to be seen, now becoming a quiet mountain that shapes the sky in silence. Place both feet on the ground. Close your eyes. Visualize a golden field of energy surrounding you. This is yours, no longer leaking into places that reject you, no longer bending in directions that drain you. This is your inner sanctuary, and it's not built on words, it's built on boundaries. Ask yourself, where have you mistaken exhaustion for loyalty? How many times have you poured from an empty cup just to keep a connection from breaking? Detachment teaches you that not every relationship deserves access to your nervous system. That some exits are not escapes, they're elevations. You'll start to notice changes. Your presence becomes heavier in the best way, grounded. People will sense the difference, not because you've become distant, but because you've become unavailable to chaos. You're no longer reacting to every emotional gust. You've become the mountain, not the weather. And no, not everyone will celebrate this version of you. Some may call it arrogance, coldness, selfishness. Let them. Let them project what they must. Because the truth is, their confusion is proof of your growth. They can no longer touch you where you no longer bleed. This is your new center, quiet, powerful, unapologetic. It's not your job to convince others of your peace. It's your responsibility to protect it and remember. Silence is not absence, it is sacred containment. It's where your true power rests, undisturbed by performance. So walk away when peace calls. Detach not to disappear, but to return to yourself. Because when your energy is no longer diluted by explanation, it becomes untouchable. And in that untouchability, no one can hurt you anymore. 6. Peace isn't something you argue for. There comes a time when you realize some people aren't listening to understand. They're listening to react, to win, to distort. And you're still explaining, still trying to make your inner peace legible to someone committed to conflict. You offer gentle truth and they throw it back with noise. But if they can't feel your peace, can they ever understand your words? This is the turning point. The moment you stop fighting to be understood. Because peace isn't something you argue for, it's something you embody. And if it must be explained to be accepted, it's not truly being seen. Buddhist wisdom teaches that peace is a state of being, not a statement of proof. Peace is a frequency, not a debate. You don't owe your calm to anyone who thrives in chaos. It's like playing a flute in the middle of a battlefield. Those caught in war won't hear the song. They'll hear weakness, retreat, vulnerability. But listen closer and you'll hear something else. The birds still will. The quiet souls, the present ones, those who feel instead of fight, they'll hear it. Not because you forced them to, but because your vibration reached theirs. Repeat this quietly to yourself. I am no longer available for noise. You're not withdrawing, you're aligning. You're no longer handing your peace to the loudest person in the room. You're not bending your truth to make it palatable for ears not ready to receive it. Ask yourself honestly, are my words seeking clarity or validation? Am I trying to express something sacred, or am I secretly begging to be seen, heard, and accepted by people who never knew how to hold space in the first place? There's a difference between communication and justification. You're allowed to express your truth, but when that truth becomes a transaction, bought and sold for scraps of approval, you lose yourself in the bargain. Buddhist teachings remind us the awakened mind no longer needs the world to validate its inner stillness. It just lives from it. Stop chasing clarity in places built on confusion. Stop negotiating with those who only speak in conflict. Let your peace speak. Let it radiate from your breath, your posture, your boundaries. Let it fill the space with something no words can replicate: presence. You will lose people when you choose this path. But those who leave were never listening anyway. And those who remain, they'll meet you in the stillness. No persuasion necessary. And remember this, you can't teach peace to someone who's addicted to noise. But you can protect your frequency and live as a quiet revolution. So stop explaining. Start vibrating higher. Let your stillness do what your words couldn't. And when you do, you'll finally understand. Peace was never something to fight for. It was something to return to. Something that only needed you. 7. The freedom of being misunderstood. You've spent so much of your life trying to make others see you clearly, shaping your words, softening your truth, rewriting your boundaries just to fit into their comfort zone. And yet, even after all the explaining, they still didn't understand. That's when something deeper begins to whisper. What if not being understood was your doorway to freedom? You were never meant to fit inside someone else's narrative. You were meant to live your own. There's a hidden power in being misunderstood. It's uncomfortable at first, especially if you were raised to believe that harmony means agreement and love means approval. But Buddhist philosophy flips this idea on its head. True liberation isn't about being understood by others. It's about understanding yourself even when others don't. What liberates you may confuse others. Let it. Imagine speaking in the language of stars, soft, ancient, luminous. You shine upward, yet they keep looking down, hoping for straight lines and easy answers. But you were never here to explain your light. You were here to be it. People may misinterpret your silence as arrogance, your calm as coldness, your detachment as distance. Let them. Their confusion is not your burden. Their discomfort is not your cue to shrink. The Buddha taught that attachment causes suffering, including our attachment to being liked, validated, or accurately seen. When you drop the need to be fully understood, you drop a weight you were never meant to carry. Smile gently and say to yourself, "It's okay if they don't get it." That's not resignation, it's resilience. It's a quiet act of rebellion against a world that demands constant explanation. It's the moment you stop handing out pieces of yourself in exchange for being heard. Ask yourself honestly, can I allow misunderstanding without feeling diminished? Can I stand tall in my own truth, even if others walk away with the wrong idea? That's the test. That's the gateway. Because the day you stop fearing misinterpretation is the day you start living fully aligned. You don't need to burn energy translating your soul into languages that were never meant to understand you. You weren't meant to be universally liked. You were meant to be fully alive. Some people won't get it. Some people will reduce you, resist you, misread you. That's their path. Yours is peace. And the irony? The more you allow misunderstanding, the more clearly you begin to see. You stop looking outward for mirrors and start looking inward for clarity. You stop trying to prove you're worthy and start being worthy, without footnotes, without disclaimers. And remember this, being misunderstood is not your weakness, it's your release. Let them misunderstand you and let yourself finally be free. Because the ones who need an explanation to accept you never truly saw you. But those who feel your presence, even in silence, they always will. Let the rest go. Let misunderstanding become your quiet revolution. Let it set you free. 8. You are not their project. You don't owe anyone a blueprint of your healing. Yet how often do you find yourself justifying your boundaries, your growth, your peace, to people who have never taken a single step toward their own? You try to explain your silence, defend your distance, clarify your calm. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You are not their project. You are not a puzzle to be solved by those who refuse to solve their own. You are not here to be fixed. You are here to unfold. There's a certain freedom in realizing that not everyone is meant to witness your becoming. Some people are more invested in the version of you that needed their approval than in the one that no longer does. They'll question your detachment, mock your introspection, label your growth as selfishness. But their discomfort with your evolution says more about their stagnancy than your direction. Like an ancient tree refusing to bend just because the wind wants to teach it how to grow, you don't need their lessons. You need your roots. Buddhist wisdom teaches that your path is inward. The real work is not in explaining it, but in living it. Stop rehearsing your healing story for people who were never listening with compassion. Stop inviting commentary from minds still ruled by their own chaos. True growth is not loud. It doesn't beg to be understood. It simply continues, quietly, deliberately, like a river shaping stone. Today, write one sentence that only you need to understand. One truth, one vow, one declaration of peace. Let it be yours alone. That's how sacred self-trust is built, when you stop outsourcing your validation and start honoring your own voice, even when no one else echoes it back. Ask yourself, whose opinion am I still carrying like a burden? That expectation, that guilt, that old fear, who gave it to you? And why are you still holding it as if it defines your worth? Let it go. Give it back. You are not responsible for shrinking your light to soothe their shadows. Healing is not a performance. It's not a group project. You are not a version of yourself that needs to be palatable to those who haven't even touched the surface of their own pain. Let them call you distant. Let them say you've changed, because you have. And you didn't come this far to keep explaining why. And remember this: you do not exist to be understood by those who refuse to understand themselves. You're not here to be liked by everyone. You're here to become yourself, fully, fearlessly, silently if you must. So stop explaining, stop rehearsing, stop seeking nods of approval from people who wouldn't recognize peace if it stared them in the face. You are not their project. You are your own revolution. Let your healing unfold without apology. 9. Detachment is an invitation, not a rejection. They say you've changed. They say you've become distant, cold, unrecognizable. But what they don't see is the fire you stepped out of. They don't see that you stopped dancing in their drama, not out of hatred, but out of healing. You walked out of the burning theater mid-play, refusing to keep performing a tragedy that no longer belongs to you. And now, your calm makes them uncomfortable. Your boundaries make them defensive. Because when chaos meets clarity, it feels like rejection. But the truth is, detachment is an invitation, not a rejection. Buddhist teachings speak of non-attachment not as abandonment, but as awareness. You're not walking away to punish others. You're walking toward peace. You're choosing silence over screaming matches, stillness over chaos, truth over performance. And to those who still live entangled in their own pain, that shift feels threatening. Why does your peace look like a threat to the chaotic? Because peace cannot be controlled. And when people can no longer pull you into their storm, they have to face their own. Your detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. It's the recognition that staying involved doesn't mean staying connected, that being available doesn't always mean being loving. You're no longer willing to normalize emotional turbulence just to feel accepted. And that terrifies those who depended on your self-abandonment to feel secure. You're not abandoning them, you're just no longer abandoning yourself. Picture this: you're walking away without slamming the door. You don't need to announce your exit. You don't need to justify your peace. You simply turn with compassion and walk in the direction of your inner truth. That's detachment, not apathy, not rejection, but a powerful act of self-alignment. Ask yourself, what chaos have I normalized just to feel accepted? How many storms did you stand in just to prove your loyalty? How many times did you keep explaining yourself to avoid conflict that should have never been yours to manage? You're allowed to put it down now. You're allowed to choose peace, even if they don't understand your silence. Some people only feel loved when you bleed for them, when you shrink, bend, explain. But that's not love. It's dependence disguised as connection. And it ends the moment you decide that your well-being is not up for negotiation. Let them misread you. Let them call your growth abandonment. You know the truth. You're not running away. You're rising. And remember this: you don't need to set yourself on fire to prove you care. You just need to stop sitting in rooms that burn your peace. Let your detachment be your doorway. Not one that slams shut, but one that opens wide, to stillness, clarity, self-respect. You are not rejecting them, you are remembering you. And when you stop explaining that shift, you stop giving people the map back to your pain. Peace doesn't shout, it simply leaves. Let yours walk with you now, quietly, fully, without apology. 10. Your stillness will trigger the loudest. There's something strange that happens when you finally find your calm. You think the world will relax with you, that others will meet you in the stillness. But instead, some get louder, more reactive, unsettled. As if your peace has poked something inside them they weren't ready to confront. And that's when the truth begins to settle in your bones. Your stillness will trigger the loudest. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your silence speaks a language they've spent their entire lives trying to avoid. Buddhist philosophy teaches that stillness isn't absence, it's presence. It's awareness stripped of noise. And when you embody that, it becomes a mirror. Not just reflecting a face, but reflecting what's hidden. Stillness reflects what others fear facing in themselves. And not everyone is ready for that kind of clarity. Some people are comfortable only in chaos. They mistake noise for life, distraction for safety. They've built entire identities on movement, on opinion, on reaction. So when you stop explaining, stop reacting, stop justifying, they can't read you, they can't control you, and that frustrates them, because now they're forced to face themselves in your quiet. Like a mirror in a dark room, your calm reveals everything the light was too afraid to touch. It's tempting to break your silence just to comfort them, to step back into their storm so they feel less threatened. But that's not compassion. That's self-abandonment dressed as empathy. Ask yourself, can I remain unmoved when others project their storms? Can I hold my peace without needing to fix the discomfort it causes in others? There is power in not reacting, in not taking the bait, in not explaining your softness, your distance, your growth. Because the ones who are ready won't feel threatened, they'll feel inspired. And the ones who aren't, let them misunderstand. Your stillness isn't for them, it's for you. When you no longer allow their storms to pull you off center, you become free. You start living from the inside out, rooted, quiet, clear. You realize that you never needed to be loud to be heard, you just needed to be true. And truth doesn't perform, it simply stands. Let your stillness speak for you. Let it unsettle the chaos. Let it teach without explaining. This is not a weapon, it's wisdom. You've trained yourself to survive noise, now learn to thrive in silence. And remember this, the storm only shouts louder when it realizes it can't move the mountain. You are that mountain. And from now on, you don't tremble every time the wind rises. You don't rush to explain your stillness. You don't react to every echo. You simply remain present, grounded, unshaken. And in that stillness, you discover what they were too afraid to see. No one can hurt what no longer needs to be understood. 11th, stop explaining your boundaries. You say no, but then comes the paragraph, the context, the softness, the backtracking. You wrap your truth in apology so it's easier to swallow, even when it's choking you. But what if your no didn't come with an essay? What if your boundary stood alone, clean, honest, and unapologetic? Buddhism teaches clarity through simplicity. A boundary, like awareness, doesn't demand justification. A boundary doesn't need a reason, it is the reason. You've been conditioned to believe that protecting your space makes you rude, distant, selfish. So you explain, you soften, you invite debate into decisions that were never meant to be voted on. But your peace is not a courtroom, it's a sacred temple. And temples don't advertise how to get in, they simply exist, untouched, for those who approach with reverence. Like a sacred temple with no signs outside, only the worthy are meant to know how to enter. Every time you over-explain your boundary, you dilute it. You turn a line into a question, an invitation for negotiation. And that's when the erosion begins. You don't lose your peace all at once. It slips away in fragments, with every justification that wasn't needed in the first place. Breathe deeply and whisper, I honor my space. That breath is your return to self-respect, to self-ownership, to clarity. You're not responsible for how others feel about your limits. You're only responsible for honoring the truth that lives behind them. If someone misunderstands your no, let them. If someone demands an explanation for your peace, they were never protecting it to begin with. Ask yourself, where have I felt guilty for simply protecting my peace? Was it the friend who made you feel bad for needing rest? The job that pushed your limits and called it ambition? The family member who mistook your boundary for betrayal? Those moments weren't about them. They were invitations for you to choose you. And now you're ready to answer. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks that open inward. They're not designed to keep people out, but to let the right ones in. The ones who respect your space won't need an explanation to understand it. They'll feel the sacredness of it. They'll meet your no with grace, because they carry boundaries of their own. This is your awakening. You no longer explain your alignment. You live it. You don't convince others to respect your peace. You embody it. And in doing so, you teach without words. Your stillness becomes your signature. Your no becomes your power. And remember this, the more sacred your peace becomes, the less you'll offer it up for discussion. You're not here to explain your boundaries. You're here to honor them, to build a life around what strengthens your soul, not what appeases the noise. No more essays, no more guilt, just truth, rooted and clear. Because when you stop explaining yourself, no one can hurt you. They don't even know where to reach. Bonus lesson: you heal in silence, you rise in power. There's a phase of healing no one talks about. It's not loud. It doesn't come with declarations or proof. It slips in like dawn, soft, golden, unnoticed by most. And it feels strange at first, this stillness. You're used to the explaining, the retelling, the need to make your healing visible so others know you've changed. But what if the final stage of healing is silence? Not because you've shut down, but because you've finally opened to yourself. Buddhism reminds us that true transformation isn't performed, it's embodied. When the need to explain dies, the soul begins to rise. You stop rehearsing your pain for those who never held it gently. You stop needing applause for boundaries you set. You no longer measure your growth by how many people understand it, because silence has become your sanctuary, not your prison. Imagine the lotus flower. It doesn't rise through the mud shouting. It ascends quietly, its bloom unseen at first, rooted deep in sacred, silent waters. Like a lotus blooming beneath the surface, its power unseen, but rooted in sacred depths. That's what your healing becomes in this phase. Not a performance, but a presence. You've spent so much energy narrating your growth, hoping they'd get it, hoping it would make the hurt worth it. But now you realize the reward was never their understanding. It was your own freedom, your peace, your quiet return to center. And suddenly, there's no need to speak about it because you're living it. Take a moment, sit with the silence. Let it say what words never could. Listen for 3 minutes and ask, what is it teaching me? You may find that the version of you emerging now doesn't need validation, doesn't chase closure, doesn't explain their peace just to be seen. You may find that the person you're becoming has nothing left to prove. Ask yourself honestly, what version of me is finally ready to emerge in the quiet? Is it the grounded one? The one who doesn't flinch when misunderstood? The one who no longer picks up the phone to defend their peace? That version doesn't argue. That version doesn't explain. That version is. Healing in silence is not avoidance. It's alignment. You rise not by speaking louder, but by sinking deeper into truth. The kind of truth that doesn't need witnesses to be real. The kind of power that no longer knocks for permission. And remember this: the loudest transformation is the one that needs no words, because it speaks through presence, peace, and unshakable stillness. Let that be your power now. Not the story, but the silence after. Not the battle, but the breath that follows. This is your rising, quiet, rooted, sacred. You don't have to explain it anymore. You only have to live it. And from this place, no one can hurt you, because they can no longer find the version of you that needed to be understood. Quick summary of the principles. The moment you realize you're doing it again, you begin to recognize how often you explain yourself out of habit. That moment of awareness is your gateway to healing. It's not about guilt. It's about breaking the pattern before it becomes your identity. Why over-explaining becomes emotional survival. Over-explaining often starts as a defense mechanism to feel safe or validated. But healing begins when you realize you don't need to explain your emotions to feel worthy. You are allowed to just feel and let it pass. What changes inside when you finally go quiet? When you stop explaining, your mind begins to slow down and your emotions settle. You realize that silence offers clarity and inner calm replaces the need to be understood. True answers emerge from stillness. Why people panic when you stop performing. Others may feel threatened when you stop justifying your peace because your detachment reveals their dependency. Your silence disturbs their expectations, but that's not your burden to carry anymore. Your energy after detachment hits. Once you detach from explaining, your energy becomes stronger and more protected. You begin to radiate calm and clarity. People can no longer drain you with their projections or expectations. Peace isn't something you argue for. Trying to argue for your peace only creates more conflict. Peace is something you live, not something you prove. When you embody it, you no longer feel the need to defend it. The freedom of being misunderstood. It's liberating to accept being misunderstood without resistance. You begin to value your inner peace more than others' approval. Not everyone needs to understand your journey for it to be valid. You are not their project. You're not responsible for fixing others or proving your healing. You're not a case study or a puzzle. You are a living, evolving human who doesn't need to explain your growth. Detachment is an invitation, not a rejection. When you detach, it's not about pushing others away. It's about protecting your mental and emotional space. People may misinterpret it, but their confusion isn't your responsibility. Your stillness will trigger the loudest. When you become calm, it often highlights other people's inner chaos. Stillness can feel threatening to those who avoid facing themselves. But your peace is not meant to make others comfortable. Stop explaining your boundaries. A boundary is a statement of self-respect, not a request for permission. You don't have to justify why you protect your peace. The act of choosing yourself is enough. You heal in silence, you rise in power. Your deepest healing happens quietly, when you're no longer trying to prove you've healed. Real power comes when you no longer seek external acknowledgement for your inner transformation. You came here searching for understanding, maybe of yourself, or of why the world doesn't always get you. But what you found is something greater. A truth that doesn't demand attention to exist. A peace that doesn't beg to be explained. And a strength that no longer needs to defend itself. We are taught that our value lies in how well we can justify our choices. But Buddha's wisdom reveals the opposite. True freedom comes when we release the urge to explain and start trusting the quiet, knowing within. Every time you choose silence over self-defense, you reclaim a part of yourself. Every time you detach, you rise, not above others, but above the chaos they carry. When you stop explaining yourself, your healing becomes your presence, calm, grounded, and whole. So now the question isn't, how can I be understood? It's, can I stand in my truth, even if no one claps? If the answer is yes, you've already begun the path to true inner peace. If this resonated with you, take a breath and share your reflection below. What truth are you ready to carry in silence today? And remember to subscribe to Deep Wisdom for more timeless Buddhist teachings that bring you home to yourself.